screen?
No, I'm still not able to see the screen.
Sorry?
No, I'm still not able to see the screen.
Then there's some problem.
Can I share the screen?
Yes, please.
Sir, screen.
Yes. If you can put that, full screen, that's fine. Yes, thank you so much.
Sir, I think there is a bit of a lag in your work. It would be great if you can switch off your video so that the quality of transmission will be much better with the audio.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Okay. So welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be asked to share experiences that we've had in the journey of coffee and Araku. Just a little bit of background to me. I'm not some foreign expert that's come to try and explain about coffee in India. I grew my first coffee in India more than 35 years ago, and in the introduction, Mr. Vaibhav mentioned that I was instrumental in changing the coffee profiles of Araku, but I just have to say that there were many people in the landscape that helped in this transformation, and one needs to acknowledge them. Just as the agronomist, I do share some of the responsibility for those for what was done, but I do want to acknowledge the help that I've had along the way from the coffee board, from various people in the coffee board, particularly Dr. Sunlini Menon, who was a mentor. I consider still one of my valuable mentors over the many years that I've been involved in coffee. So with that introduction, perhaps I should just start and talk. I just want to give an overview of what was attempted and also try to fit it into the shall we say, the Atal Incubation Center's, what would we call it? Its aspirations, because when I look at the mission statement of the AIC, I see many tick boxes there of things that we did in Araku and made a difference to the quality of coffee. And when I speak of quality, I think one of the first and the most significant impressions that I had when I got involved in coffee was when I got in contact with the Coffee Lab, Dr. Sunlini Menon, and she had as a sort of one of her mantras there, quality, the need of the hour. And that really inspired me. And from the work that I did in the Palani Hills, I had the privilege of joining Nandi Foundation approximately 18 years ago to see what we could do to turn the coffee around, the coffee that was, I would say, fairly mediocre in Araku. It was a non-traditional coffee growing area. And ostensibly, Nandi began to join work in the Araku region, not so much for coffee, but for interventions in health and in education for the tribal communities who were not in a very good shape. There was a lot of poverty, there was a lot of malnutrition. And so the first beginnings of work more than 20 years ago in Araku was connected to how do we raise the level of the health and prosperity of the region. And in the course of that, after 2 or 3 years, the community contacted Nandi Foundation and asked them, can you help us with coffee? Because if you want us to be part of sending our children to school, if you want to help us with, we need cash. And we do grow coffee. We may not grow it very well, but it's an opportunity for us to get some cash and be part of the sort of the economic transformation that they could observe that was happening in India proper. So on that note, I was asked to come as an advisor, and there was the coffee situation was pretty dreadful. There was what I jokingly call now what I call high altitude coffee. That is to say, coffee that was allowed to grow up to 20 and 30 feet high. And I used to refer to it as the Araku version of high altitude coffee. It had not been pruned properly. There was a lot of work to be done in each of these fields. And at the time, in around 2004, when I joined work in Araku, I basically felt the need for working with all of these farmers, these small farmers, each with 1 acre, to just learn how to prune the coffee, to make a better coffee, but most important of all, how to address the nutrition of the coffee, how to address the soil, and in that sense, how to regenerate the earth and make it better for the coffee and for the region. So that was the beginnings. And from there, we had a journey with the community, which I have to say was extremely satisfying. We had a lot of help along the way from all sorts of people, all sorts of experts. But the most important thing was what I refer to in my title, the importance of the formula. That is to say, profits for farmers. Farmers are not going to want to work in the coffee fields if they're not getting profits. The second thing was accent on quality. And that meant a whole journey, that what we call in the Nandi Foundation, the 18 steps towards quality coffee. And then the third thing was regeneration. And by regeneration, I mean a form of organic agriculture that would regenerate the soil, that would regenerate the health of the coffee bushes and deliver a quality coffee. So those three you might say, platforms or that we needed, those planks that we needed to introduce to the region to ensure that we could turn what was basically good coffee into a quality coffee, into a specialty coffee as it is today. And around that, to be able to build a brand and to create, just to create a lot of work, a lot of interest, a lot of employment around this. So that was the task in the beginning. So first of all, we needed to have people who knew their coffee. We needed to have people who knew what a good coffee looked like. We had to have people who knew when to harvest the coffee and how to treat the coffee before it got processed. Now, in the initial days, we did not have a central processing unit. We were collecting coffee from farmers, and at that time we had around 4,000 to 5,000 farmers with us, and we had to rely on them to do their processing. And each one of those many farmers was processing their coffee in the way that they thought was best, with baby pulpers, sort of makeshift drying yards. Some of the coffee was dried on cow dung floors, If there was a tar seal road nearby, it would be dried on a tar seal road. And basically, the hygiene of the coffee that was being processed was not the best. So at a certain point around 2006, I approached our CEO, Mr. Manoj Kumar, and I basically asked him to, we had to do something about the quality of the coffee. And I said it would be quite impossible to ensure that 4,000 to 5,000 farmers were going to process all of their coffee in a very, very hygienic and high quality manner. It was just a physical impossibility to get around all of those villages and ensure that this would happen. So we took the decision to set up a central processing unit. And at the same, so this was a huge decision because it was a big investment. It was basically an investment in the community. And after a lot of consultation with the community, we decided to go ahead and set up the central processing unit in the town of Araku. By that, we were able then to control the quality. And I think one of the most important things that I can, from my experience, is that we have to ensure that the quality processes are followed to ensure that we get a quality coffee. But if I can just step back a little bit to the subject of regeneration, one of the planks that I spoke of in my title. If you see the second slide in my screen, Anandi's regenerative agricultural tenets, you see there that we have a series of very proactive organic methodologies that we apply, not just for growing coffee, but for all of the crops in Araku, whether it be millets, whether it be mango trees, fruit trees, agroforestry, all of those things basically follow certain tenets. And you can see the titles of those things are mostly familiar to most people who are involved in agriculture, whether it's intercropping, whether it's using herbal sprays rather than pesticides, whether it's liquid manures, crop rotation, green manures, but also particularly composts. So if you can go to the next screen, Mr. Baiba. Yes. So let me just talk a little bit about, it's one of my favorite topics of conversation, compost and carbon. We hear a lot about carbon. We hear a lot about climate change and the need for sequestering carbon into the soil. But in agriculture, it's pretty much ignored. And a lot of that's a result of a conventional agriculture, which basically ignored one of the most primary elements in our agricultural activity, the element of carbon. We have been what I like to call mining carbon from our soils in India for the last at least 50 years, from the time of the Green Revolution. And as much as was achieved during the Green Revolution, one of the things that was lost was the carbon component. So when I started testing soils in Araku, I discovered that there was a lot of depletion. There was a lot of the lands that were, the coffee had started to be grown on was land that had been part of a slash and burn techniques that the population had been doing. The soils were eroded. There was a lack of high carbons, which I had hoped was there, but was not. So we were talking about carbon levels of about 0.4 and 0.5%. So one of the most important activities was for us to restore the carbon. And that was to be done by what I call, in my own modern terminology, what I call the prebiotic element. We have to introduce carbon, not so much to feed the plants, the coffee plants, but we have to feed the carbon into the soil to ensure that we have a rich microbial population that can eventually lead to a quality coffee. So that if you can take it to the next slide. Thank you. So here I talk about, I got a title which is a little bit in the face, called Muck and Magic. Over the years, I have experimented with many different types of inoculants, mostly from flower preparations, which are composted in the soil and then added to our composts and added to our soils to ensure that we get a quality soil. Now, to my mind, from my experience, that if you have a rich microbial soil, you will have a symbiotic relationship with your coffee bushes that will ensure that the coffee will taste better. And over the years, I've experimented meticulously with this for the last 35 years, all the way from the Balani Hills to Araku. And I've seen that the moment you introduce colonies of bacteria, which are beneficial colonies, and then you have this symbiotic relationship with the roots, with the rhizobia, with the areas of the root zones of the coffee bushes, you will start to elicit good quality coffee tastes in the coffee. This is difficult to get with a chemical methodology. If you apply loads and loads of nitrates into the soil, you have what we call involuntary uptake of nitrates into the plants, and you get tremendous amount of growth, and you get a lot of yields initially, but the taste profiles will be compromised. So our choice in Nandi was to go the organic route. The farmers were very happy with that. Already there was an existing default organic, but what we did was we started introducing proactive organic methodologies into the soil, into the nutrition of the bushes to ensure that we got health. If you have a healthy bush, by that, you avoid all of the lifestyle diseases that I describe when I'm talking about coffee health. The pathology that we practice is basically a health rather than dealing with disease. So if you have a healthy bush with a higher bricks content, it has the power to be able to resist leaf rust. It has the power to be able to resist insect attacks. And when you have a healthy bush, it expresses itself with a higher sugar content in the coffee cherries. As a result of that, the taste profiles improve, and you get all sorts of interesting profiles, which every coffee taster is looking for. You get apricot notes, you get your strong caramel and citrus notes, you will get jasmine notes, you will get red berry notes, all of the things that we're looking for in coffee that will ensure that we're getting towards a quality coffee. So in the initial years, that was the concentration, building up the foundations of a healthy coffee environment with the farmers. And if you can just go to the next slide. So our task was to build the foundations for a good quality coffee and to build a brand of coffee which was part of our aspiration. We had to build up this soil food web. So what you see here is collections of preparations, these inoculants that we use in the soil. On the left side, you see what we have, a C100, which is an inoculant that we use as a foliar spray, as a root dip, all sorts of ways we use the C100 to ensure that we get healthy bushes. On the right side, you see storage of what we call our Black 100, which is it's a soil inoculant which we apply to the soil 3-4 times a year, and each of the farmers knows how to do that and puts it out very diligently. So slowly over the years, basically our soil food web got richer, and our coffees also started to taste better. The next slide. So from that, we started to develop slowly from those, what I called those high altitude coffees. We started working with farmers in farmer field schools. We diligently organized villages into committees. We had regular monthly meetings. We had experts come in to sort of jazz up the whole training methodologies. We made it a lot of fun. We ensured that the coffees were pruned properly. We started to bring in extra, more diverse vegetation into the coffee forests, because many of the plantations in Araku were pretty much monocultures. There was a lot of reliance upon silver oak trees. So we started introducing a tree planting program to ensure that we got a richer, more diverse shade coffee. And as a result of that, the coffee bush is very much a community bush. It's a forest species, and it loves to have lots of different conversations in the root zones with the other species of trees. And so that was part of the 20-year journey, was to bring in that diversity, to bring in that that forest, that rich forest mixture into our soils, to ensure that the coffee bushes were, first of all, happy. We talk about our happy coffee bush. If you have a happy coffee bush, you have a healthy coffee bush. And as much as this sounds rather jocular, it's very serious. You know, we have a tradition in India going way back to J.C. Bose, where he talks about the sensitivity of plants. They have feelings. And if coffee bushes, if they have good nutrition, they will express themselves with very, very tasty coffee. And that was what our aim was. That was the journey over this last 20 years, supported by all these experts. And I'm happy to say that as we go on, our coffee tastes better and better. So next slide. Next, please.
1 second, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, as you see, I have a title called Nurturing a Functional Forest. We introduced the idea that not only we weren't just aiming at coffee per se. We were looking at a wide portfolio of crops centered around coffee, but also in attendance to coffee. So we introduced a lot of fruit trees, which could give income to the farmers. We introduced spices. We made sure that the pepper was well looked after. So we had a pepper income with the coffee. We had fruit trees. We had a lot of different elements to this coffee landscape. And I think it's an important thing that we shouldn't think of coffee as being a singularly a monocrop. Coffee can be part of an entire landscape, particularly in the tribal communities of Araku. And so we developed, as you can see in the picture, you can see this diverse village ecobiome. And slowly we had a lot of fruit trees came in. Behind those fruit trees was coffee. And as a result of that diversity, we started seeing coffee taste profiles improving. So next. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, I think one of the unique things that we did to ensure that we could, as I call it here in the title, incubating excellence, to ensure that we got to that quality. And so we introduced a concept, and Dr. Sunil Menon was very much part of the introduction of what we called the gems of Araku. And here we established a series of competitions. We had cupping competitions, or we had cupping to ensure that we had experts coming in to taste the coffee, to ensure those profiles were improving year after year. But the one of the critical elements to it was to introduce a competition among farmers, to ensure that each of the farmers followed all of the procedures to ensure quality coffee. So we had to ensure that the weeding was done properly, the pruning was done properly, the mulching was done properly, shade management. You can see all the list of things was there, and we gave points. And every month we had these assessments went on, meticulously having farmer field schools, ensuring that each of the farmers was going into his field. And because we were offering more money for the coffee, they had the incentive of going in there to ensure that they got a better crop yield. And so that year after year, they were seeing their crop yields going up, they were getting a better income. And this competition, I think more than any other, inculcated a sense of excellence. And I think it's very important when you can aggregate farmers into a max cooperative, as we did. Once you get that sense of community, you get some very sort of soft forms of competition where farmers are able to share information with their farmers, with their farmer colleagues. They're able to share knowledge. They're able to be part of a whole program of coffee improvement. And this assessment sheet that I have here, it's a long list of things, and we have points. And at the end of the year, we total up these points and we select 100 of the top farmers, and then we each of those fields we inspect, and then we come down to the top 10. And then I have a particular jury that comes in to assess which is the gem of Araku, which is the best farmer. Attendant to that, we also have the best village. So we have all sorts of assessments for the tidiest village, the village that has the best hygiene, the way that the amount of coffee that they produce, the quality of the coffee that they produce. All of those assessments were extremely important as to change the mindset, to ensure that coffee excellence was the need of the hour, and that they were part of this movement for quality. So in a sense, what we were trying to do is to create an entrepreneurship among farmers. And what their plant and machinery, if you like, was their land, was their soil, was their forest. And each one of them was able to dedicate their time, because they were getting well paid for it. They were able to dedicate their time to ensure that they would have better and better quality estates. Their 1 acre became a model of excellence. And out of that came quality coffee. It was a dedicated endeavor. And I have to say, it just gets better and better. And this incubation of excellence among these farmer entrepreneurs, I think it cannot be overemphasized, the importance of this. The foundation of a good coffee rests with good production, good soils, healthy bushes, following all the protocols that are common now. It's known among the coffee board, it's known among growers, but it's hardly ever, especially among small growers, it's hardly ever sort of done to perfection. And this Gems of Araku competition was one of those methodologies. So next slide. This was so very important. Every month we had this community participation. In my initial years in Araku, there was very, very little women's participation, you know, especially at the meetings. They hardly spoke. In fact, the entire community hardly spoke. But over the years, as we got more and more involved with the community, these kind of meetings you see in the screen became common, and the women became much more vocal. And because they were picking the coffee, they also had a lot of opinions to express. And I think that community participation was one of the key secrets to the success of establishing the Araku brand that we have today. Next. So as a result of this, we had what we call a festival every year. We had up to 4,000 to 5,000 farmer families would come share in the festivities. And I think one of the critical elements that enabled us to get a lot of help in the community at the village level was initiating a volleyball competition. And we gave out a whole lot of nets to the community around about 8-10 years ago. And in the first year, we gave out these nets and balls and distributed it. And then my team then went and took the records to see how many teams were going to be part of the competition, expecting to have maybe 10, 12 teams. But by that time, we were working with over 400 villages. And the news came back that we had 335 teams that wanted to be part of the competition. And this became one of the great successes for involving the youth. And I can't emphasize this more. So as the years went by, more and more youth got involved in the competitions. And finally, we were able to get women's teams involved. This year, we have 33 women's teams will be in the competition. They will be part of it. We have over 400 teams, men's teams playing, and we have round robins that start in December, and by March, April, we have the finals. And we play the finals just before we have this Gems of Araku competition. And because we have more than 1,000 people involved in this coffee organizational structure, being able to use the youth was an extremely important part. So I think one of the clues for our success was to be able to excite the youth to become part of the coffee movement. And that was an extremely important thing that our CEO, Mr. Manoj Kumar, introduced into the whole thing. And it became a sort of an annual event. And wherever you go in Araku, you will find a volleyball court and the nets, and you'll find from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon every day, sometimes even in the morning, you will have the whole village will turn out to play there and practice their volleyball. Extremely important part of that youth engagement. Next. So as a result of setting up a central processing unit, we had to then ensure that we got a good harvest. Now, as you can see on the left of the screen here, you can see all of those coffee that was harvested it's crimson red beans. We have to remember that coffee is a fruit. We talk about it as a coffee cherry. And anyone who goes out and picks an apple or an apricot or even a mango, when you harvest it, the first thing you ask for is ripeness. And very often we've lost this sense of importance of ripeness in our coffee. We should not be picking green beans. The proper stage to pick these beans is when they are ripe, when their sugars are fully developed. Only then will you get the taste profile of the coffee come out. So over quite some years, we slowly worked with the community to pick only the ripe, the reddest coffee cherries. And what is red and what is pink is quite subjective. But finally, we got these color codes right, and the community worked with us to develop and pick only the ripest cherry. And because each of the families was involved in the picking, they weren't working as laborers. They were working for their own entrepreneurial development. And so they picked only the ripest cherry, and as a result of that, they got a premium price for it. So we introduced a whole lot of different things that were not there in the community before. We had one of our biggest tasks was to ensure that the community was not dependent upon money lenders and traders. Traders are important as part of the landscape, but in this case, they also dovetailed as money lenders, and there was a lot of dependence upon them. So in order to get this coffee from the community, we had to slowly ensure that they were freed from the dependence upon money lenders and traders, so that we could take this coffee, we could process it, and then enabled us to be able to give them a good price for a quality coffee. But as part of that, we had to have traceability, and we also had to have transparency. So you can see in the left picture here, we were one of the first to introduce digital scales in the region. Before that, it was your normal scales with weights and measures, which was extremely subjective because it could be manipulated by traders. And so we introduced this digital scales where each of the farmers could see that they actually got 55.55 gram kgs of coffee, and they could see it exactly, and they could go into their passbook and they could get that money for that coffee could be transferred to their bank account. So we got bank accounts for all of the farmers. There was a transparency in the payments. And over the years, we got this enormous amount of trust developed in the community. And that was extremely important for us in order to be able to get the scale we wanted to build a brand of coffee. You can see on the right side, you can see all the color codings that we had to use to ensure. You can see the green there, which is organic, because as each year we were introducing new farmers. So there was in conversion farmers, there was fully organic farmers. All those things had to be labeled. And then we had to identify all of the different personalities of the coffee, which were starting to emerge as a result of a good soil and healthy bushes. So next slide. So as I mentioned, 18 steps towards quality. And that quality we were able to get by having a very, very professional central processing unit where experts took care of the processing to ensure that all of these very, very nicely ripened coffees were processed in a very, very professional manner. With experts, particularly one of my colleagues over the many years, Mr. Vinod Hegde. He's been looking after that quality and ensuring that none of the coffee is dried on cement platforms or on tar seal roads or any of the things that were happening earlier. We have raised beds to ensure that the coffee does not get any earth notes, unwanted, unclean notes. So it was production oriented and it was quality oriented. And as you can see, this is our beautiful central processing unit. The land was given by a tribal community to establish this under the Max Cooperative. And we were able to bring in very, very scientific processes into that conversion of a coffee to a quality one. Next slide. And here I talk about the foundations of that processing, which were extremely important. We brought in new machinery, very efficient machinery. This one on the left you can see is a Penagos. It has so many different processes that we can do. We can do a honeyed process. We can do pulp sun-dried. We can do washed coffees. There's just so many different variables of coffee processing that we can do with this incredible machine, which is extremely efficient also in water. We only need 1 liter of water to process 6 kgs of coffee. And so we were able to sort of, our costs for the amount of water that we used went down, and a lot of advantages of upgrading our coffee processing machinery. On the right side, of course, you have the moisture meter, which most people are familiar with now, but also we meticulously kept check on our bricks content, which you see at the bottom of the right-hand side of the screen. Bricks meter measurements of the coffee cherries as it come in. We are able to correlate with taste, and the higher the bricks, the better the taste profiles came. The sugar development was better, the better the taste. So a lot of this, the science of coffee tasting was developed over these years with all our coffee experts. Next. Hello?
So go ahead, sir. There was somebody who had opened the mic.
Okay. And just how many minutes do I have, Mr. Baiba?
You have time, sir. Please go ahead. It's a very interesting session.
Thank you. So the next in the screen was to ensure that we have warehouses which were full of light, where we could do all our bulking, we could do all our labeling, we could do all our processes. We switched from bags for harvesting to crates to ensure that there was no crushing, that there was no undue fermentation of the beans. As you can see here, all of this labeling was extremely important. We had very, very good dunnage to ensure that there was not 18 steps towards quality. There was no element that would bring in taste profiles that we didn't want, that we were in control basically of creating a high quality coffee. So next slide. And attendant to that was this element of what we call the 3 T's, which is the trust, the traceability, and the transparency. Transparency in terms of particularly of weighment, where you have digital scales that were checked every year by government to ensure, and sealed to ensure that, you know, what you saw was the correct weight. You had trust among the community. They would get paid on time when they wanted the money. It went directly into the bank accounts, preferably into the in the name of the woman, because they best knew how to look after the finances of the family. And most particularly important was the traceability. Traceability is one of the most important things which you look for in a specialty coffee these days. You have to know where it came from, what was the terroir, who was the farmer, all the way down to the farmer. And because of our coding, our color coding, we developed a traceability methodology which was impeccable. And in addition to that, we, in order to get the advantage of the organic certification. We had the IMO control comes every year to ensure that we are certified organic. I think it's important to have some kind of certification that says that you care about either the environment or the quality. It can be Raintree Alliance. It can be any of these certifications that are available now. But it's very important to have something there. It can be organic, as I say. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be a regenerative organic alliance. And the other thing that we had on the right side is the Fair Trade certificate. Now, one of the advantages of fair trade is the fact that the money comes into the community itself, and they have the option to be able to spend it on water supply, upon community services. In the case of Araku, one of the years when a large amount of money came in a bulk amount, a total of 10 or 12 lakhs came in one year for the fair trade premium. So the community bought an ambulance. They needed an extra ambulance to ensure that, women that were having problems in childbirth in emergencies could be moved to Vizag or to Araku town, to the hospital. So they were able to spend this money on meaningful ways within the community. And those certificates were a great help over the years to ensure that the coffee started to develop a personality, that it was certified organic, that it was a fair trade certified, and that it tasted great. So those were the important things that we brought in. So next slide. Now, as we went on, we began to realize, through the help of our cup tasters who used to come every year as part of the Cup of Excellence, jurors used to come, and up to 9-10 of these cup tasters used to come and give us indications on how the coffee was tasting. And so we started to discover that certain areas were tasting different from others. And we started to discover that each of these areas of land with different soils, some of it was scree, some of it was, bottomlands, some of it was of diverse shades, some of it was monoculture. So we started to identify these personalities in the coffee. And so we introduced this concept of terroir. Now, that's a French term. Originally a Latin term. It basically means terrain. And the concept is that each land and the combination with the farmer and the climate can produce taste profiles which are different from others, and that each of these tastes are unique. So about 10 years ago, we set upon the task of measuring these different terroirs in terms of elevation, in terms of soil type, in terms of the amount of rocks in the land, in terms of exposition, east, north, west, facing. All of those things we started to meticulously measure. So in this 12,500 farmers that we have, we began to map all of their different 1 acre plots, and we GPS them all and put them into these mapping situations, which you see on the screen, so that we could, we knew exactly what was under silver oak, what was diversified shade, what was on scree, what was all of these, whether it was a basin area. And as a result of that, we started to develop all our SKUs as a result of identifying these coffee personalities. And this was when we got into a very important differentiation of quality. And as a result of that differentiation, we were able to sort of sell the coffee as a brand which had all of these different things, which had traceability, which was certified in a number of different ways, And suddenly we had a coffee that we could say could stand on its own anywhere in the world as a quality coffee. So terroir classification of these lands was extremely important. And every farmer knew his land as an extension of himself. And he took pride in planting extra types of trees, particularly secondary shade, which was one thing that lacked in the beginning in Araku. There were no dadops, there was no glaracidia, there was no, particularly there was no leguminous secondary shade. So we had to begin introducing all of this to get that natural forms of nitrogen, nodulation, rhizobial cultures had to be introduced to ensure that the coffee began to give a significant yield. So that terroir, I cannot stress more, it was extremely important. We had an expert come from Paris who had worked a lot in wines. So we introduced that whole wine culture terroir concept to the coffee. And this made a great deal of importance to create the personalities that we needed to be able to sell them in meaningful ways among people who wanted really great coffee. So next slide. So Mr. Hippolyte Corte was the terroir expert who came with a number of colleagues, and we were able to sort of utilize his services to classify all these different regions, these 12,500 farmers, into all these classifications. It was an exacting task, but it was a very satisfying one because each of the farmers then began to take pride in the particular personality of the coffee that he was able to contribute to the whole brand. Then as a result of that, there was a lot of spin-offs that began as we started to sell the coffee. We started to sell the coffee abroad in significant quantities. And it spun off a lot of expertise. A lot of people got involved. You see here in the frame, Ms. Sherry John is there. We got a Specialty Coffee Association certification for training baristas, for training brewers. And so I think we were the first in India to get the certification. So as we got a great coffee, we also needed to have great people to roast the coffee and to serve the coffee and also to know the coffee. And so we were helped with these experts that came in to work on these expertises that come as a result of developing a quality product. Next slide. I just would like to emphasize that in Nandi, we consider it to be just the tip of the iceberg. You know, there's the Araku region is a vast one. The total 11 mandals come to more than 6,000 square kilometers. There are vast areas that still need to be reforested. This particular photo was taken from Ganda village, just on the boundary of their coffee estates, looking down onto the village and to the vast amount of empty areas that still need to have treescapes developed. Carbon sequestration needs to be done to revive the springs and the rivers that can be developed as perennial rivers. So I just wanted to say there's miles to go before we sleep. There's vast areas to be done still, and we always are on the lookout for assistance, financial assistance to develop these carbonscapes to ensure that we grow this beautiful Araku region back into a rich, functional forest where the communities can be prosperous. So next slide. So in the course of building a good coffee, creating a good coffee, having a very strong community with us was the task of building the brand. And so that meant developing accessories, cups, you know, that we needed to have good looking, beautiful cups and means of brewing the coffee, nice packaging, beautiful packaging, something that expressed the brand. The brand personality we consider to be seriously playful, so you can see from the leaf motifs that it does express that. There's got to be a lot of color involved. Take the coffee away from this, what I consider to be the dull brown paper bag, sort of NGO-ish looking coffees, to something that's bright, that attracts customers and expresses the personality of the coffee. And one of the opportunities was to establish Araku in Paris. So we established a shop there, and as you can see the shop in the background, it's selling the Araku coffee in a dedicated manner. Created a big buzz in Paris because the French, in many cases, were not aware that, you know, that India grew significant amounts of Arabica coffee. So we were able to have a tremendous amount of conversations around that, you know, Indian coffees are some of the best in the world. And, you know, the Italian coffee, which is considered great coffee, was actually a vast amount of it was Indian coffee. So a lot of conversations around that, trying to bring as much as possible the Indian coffee as a buzzword in the community and in the world community, and that was a very satisfying one. As a result of establishing this shop in Paris, we got a lot of criticism from people in India saying, "Hey, wait a minute, why are you putting a shop in Paris? Indians like good coffee too." So as a result of that, we came back via Paris to India and established an online shop, arakucoffee.in, and all of our coffees are available on that site, and you can, it's possible to also buy the accessories there. So that's the result of getting foundations, building a vast community of entrepreneur coffee growers, getting quality, ensuring that those 18 steps towards quality are honored, and building the brand as a result of that. So next. And the final sort of, the end, I'd have to say, or the a very, very satisfying end to that is to establish a place where we can sell wet coffee, because that's the ultimate value addition. Value addition is so very, very important. Besides value addition, it's only through value addition that you can ensure that the farmer is going to make a profit. And when the farmer makes a profit, he will work in his field and work towards producing a quality coffee. So one of the ways in which that ultimate in value addition is to establish a cafe and sell wet coffee. So this year, next month, we're going to be opening Araku Coffee Cafe in Bangalore. And we look forward to inviting all interested coffee drinkers, part of the coffee landscape, to our coffee shop, to our coffee cafe in Bangalore. So this is the architectural version of it, but the real thing looks even better. So we look forward to seeing everyone who's interested in coffee coming to our cafe next month. Next slide. So one interesting, sorry? Hello?
Sir, that was a off trace. Somebody opened the mic. Please go ahead, sir. Please finish it.
Okay. So look, this is a final slide, and it's a very satisfying one to show, because About 2 years ago, I got contacted by the finance minister, Dr. Thomas Isaac from Kerala, and he said that he had recently met Chandrababu Naidu in a meeting, in an interstate meeting, and Chandrababu Naidu had given him some Araku coffee. And Dr. Thomas Isaac said he felt insulted because he said, what is this chief minister of, Andhra Pradesh? What do they know about coffee? How come he's giving me coffee and I don't even have something that looks like a good package of Kerala coffee? So he started asking about this mysterious Araku coffee, and he said, "Is it genuine? I mean, or is it just, coffee from Kerala that's been packaged and called, coffee from Andhra Pradesh?" So on the phone, he said, "Look, I'm not sure whether you exist or not. Can you prove otherwise?" And so I said, "Well, please come to Araku, visit us. We're the genuine Araku." And so he took a plane flight to Vizag, and we picked him up from the airport, and we took him up, and we introduced him to the community. You can see him here in the pictures in our warehouse, sitting among the farmers, talking about the journey, understanding the processes. And so Thomas Isaac said to us, "Look, I want to do this in Wayanad. Will you help?" And of course, we said, what we did in Araku is open source. We have no secrets. The biggest secret is to be able to work with the community to ensure that you actually achieve what you're after. And so I said that is the secret, and that can only be lived. And so as a result of that, he went back and worked with a colleague of mine, Mr. Ajit Mathai, and they developed a plan to establish a similar model to the Araku model in Wayanad, which would ensure regenerating the forest of Wayanad to make it carbon positive, to ensure that the coffee quality was raised, and basically to replicate this model, the Araku model. It was a very satisfying moment, and as a result of that, we go regularly to Wayanad to help working with the Swaminathan Foundation, with the coffee board officials in Wayanad. Recently, the land acquisition took place, the machinery will be set in place, and we look forward to a journey towards a quality Wayanad coffee, which they plan to sell in Kerala itself in the domestic market. So that's pretty much the end of my story, a story that continues. It's been a story of very, very satisfying one, having met a wonderful array of experts, all the way from experts within the coffee board, working with the coffee board chairman many years ago, Lakshmi Venkatachalam, who supported us in this endeavor towards excellence, Dr. Sunani Menon, and then all of the experts that have joined us along the way, among the years, helping us to do this this beautiful experience of working with the community to create an excellent product. And I think it's a clue for any entrepreneurs that want to create great things in coffee. First you have to work with the foundations. You have to create great coffees. You have to get your processes right. You have to get your 18 steps towards quality. You have to get your packaging right. You have to work with so many different landscapes of experts. But it's extremely satisfying. And as a result of that, you spin off so much employment among people who are interested in working in this sphere. You take away the drudgery from coffee. We took away all of the processing requirements of the community. All they had to do was to produce great coffee, which was their which was their area of excellence. That was their area of competence. And we were able to take that drudgery away of every year processing that coffee in conditions which they were not able to produce a quality coffee. So the central processing unit was central to it. The picking the right cherry was important, getting the right machinery, getting the right experts, and most important of all was to have cupping experts come out every year at their own expense to cup the coffee and say, this year I'm getting a jasmine note. Oh, you've got red berries coming through. Oh, you have spice notes. We have a lot of excited people from South Korea, cuppers from South Korea who come in, who are very excited by the spice notes. They keep asking us whether we're adding pepper into the coffee. And it's a result of actually the soils, which are very rich in minerals in Araku. They're starting to come through into the bushes and expressing themselves in the beans. And as a result of that, some of our biggest buyers come from South Korea for small roasters, selling it to small roasters in order to get the name of Araku into South Korea and make it famous and put Indian coffee on the map. So that's probably the most satisfying thing, is that people start talking about Indian coffee as a standalone rather than a filler in some other Italian coffee or some German coffee or whatever. It has its own personality. It stands by itself and it's respected. So that was a satisfying journey that we've all had in Nandi Foundation, working with the community and developing this quality. So I'll end with that, and I'd be happy to take any questions anyone would have.
Good morning, David. I'm Kiran from Vikasa. Recently, we met in Araku also.
Yes.
Yeah. So we are working to two farmer producer companies in Araku Valley and Tubriguda. Oh, how can we work together? I think if I can get your contact details, let's speak. Speak privately.
Surely, just write to me. My email details is just simply david@nandi.org. And let's talk together, Kiran. Be happy to do that. Yeah. Whereabouts are you working? Are you working in Chintapalli or?
No, Araku Valley, Vikasa. We recently met in the Vikasa office.
Yes. Okay. No, more than happy to interact, Kiran. And
Thank you.
And let's get.
And we have a common friend also, Gautam.
Sorry?
We have a common friend, Gautam also.
Gautam, yes. Okay. No, happy to keep the conversation going.
Thank you.
Hi, David. My name is Ramkumar Verma. I am the founder and CEO for Native Araku Coffee.
Okay.
All right. So, first of all, kudos to Nandi Foundation for a great contribution for getting the brand of Araku across the globe. I've been working in promoting Araku coffee for the last 3.5 years, and I run the organization called Native Araku Coffee.
Okay.
From Visakhapatnam. I'm from Vizag.
Yes.
All right. So I really got impressed on the last 3 points, and Araku Coffee has been one of my role model in establishing the coffee in terms of promoting Araku as a brand on a global platform. So we are a small entrepreneur. Just started trying to work with people. For the last 3 years, I've been working in Anantagiri Hills in purchasing coffee from there and branding Araku coffee across Indian market right now. we started our wings, expanding our wings on the other side of it, right from Lambasingi, Chintapalli, and
Okay.
Padinur.
Yeah.
Certainly, I'll reach out to you, David, by writing an email to you. And
Surely.
how can you help us out together in adding value to the tribal fraternity and bringing the brand of Araku Valley both in domestic and global market?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, there's miles to go, as I say in my slide, and I think it's just important to get those processes in place and ensure that we don't compromise on quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's important. Yeah, what's your brand? You're selling it as Araku coffee, Araku Valley coffee?
It's called as native Araku coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. So because, the way I'm not from the coffee expertise, but I'm certainly coming from an IT background. So my intention in setting up a coffee shop is to add value to the tribal fraternity in Araku Valley. So that's the purpose of why we've started this organization.
Yeah,
So
it needs to get to the customer.
that's right. So today we've built a platform in such a way that I cater to about 5,700 customers within India. So we've shipped our Araku coffee right from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, and we've started branding it well in terms of maintaining quality, consistency, and trust with the customers, and how Indian
Yeah.
coffee is different from others too. So I
Yeah.
think it certainly adds value to talk to people like you in learning more about coffee and adding value to the ecosystem too.
Yes, happy to have those conversations, and also to be, as as you've said, you have so many customers in all parts of India, and I think it's important. I think we have what do we have, like 100 grams per capita consumption of coffee in India. It's such a small amount compared to, let's say, another coffee growing country like Brazil that has 6 kilos per capita consumption. So 60 times the consumption. We would, if we had the same as Brazil, which is still half of what Finland is consuming, then I think we would have no exports. We would sell it all domestically. So there's just so much to explore in that way, So that's what's inspiring, is that we have our customers domestically, and but we need to deliver that quality so that we don't. We should never compromise there.
Absolutely, David. Because when we have started this in 2017, it took 2 years for us to get consistency. One, we have to learn, we have to unlearn, we'll have to take feedback from customers, because coffee as a product has different taste buds on the tongue for different customers from different places. So
Yes.
It took some time to get consistency on it, but honestly speaking, we've got one consistency which everybody has started building trust. Okay, if we get coffee from native Araku coffee, there's consistency in it, and we started loving this coffee so much.
Yeah.
I think it's a long way to go, David. Certainly, I'll take it offline. I think
Sure.
I'll write a note to you, and then we can connect soon.
Sure. Thank you, Ram. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David.
Hi, David. This is Bopana here. I'm a coffee grower from Coorg. Just had a question, a real quick one regarding your central processing unit.
Yes.
Very impressive indeed. I'm just curious as to A, what's the capacity of your central processing unit? And B, if you could throw some light on the economics of it in terms of, I see that you use Panagos equipment, fantastic, in-house, good manufacturing practices and all of that. So if you could sort of throw some light on that, that would really be helpful. Thank you.
So in terms of capacity, we can process within this without having to replicate. We can process 500 tons of clean coffee. So that was part of the aim. As far as the Panagos goes, if we need to increase production, we can do a second line. We've developed it in such a way that we can put a second line. So when production demands are there, we can ensure that we can up the processing, the productivity for the central processing unit. But we're particularly interested in perhaps establishing another unit further afield, maybe in Munjimput, or because there is a time factor, you know, when we're, as a central processing unit, we need to get the coffee into the processing unit within a fixed amount of time. And so it would be great to have a second unit, which ensures that we don't spend too much on the road, time on the road in trucks delivering the coffee. And that will also bring down the cost. So the moment we get to a point where, you know, we get to capacity with our existing one, we look forward to be able to replicate that in another area, more decentralized area, maybe Munjimput, maybe further afield. You know, so that's the mentality behind it, and not to compromise on quality. Getting these really good processing machinery, that's important. Did that cover your point? So you had another question, I think.
Yes, in terms of the cost-benefit analysis of it, if it's of course confidential, then I don't want to talk about it for you to talk about it here. But otherwise, if you could share some light on how does that work from your experience, and a sort of a clarifying question. When you said 500 metric tons, is that 500 metric tons of raw fruit, or is it 500
No,
metric tons?
that's clean coffee.
Clean coffee. Okay, thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So in terms of costs, well, I think one of the big mandates among our angel investors was that we had to ensure develop a good coffee, sell it at a good price, and just make sure that shared value came back to farmers. So we pay a high price for the cherry, and that high price is we pay 45 rupees for cherry, ripe cherry, for a premium cherry, and that translates to around 270 rupees for clean coffee if you multiply it power of 6.
Right.
So so that's far beyond the whole idea of the mandate was to take the coffee beyond commodity pricing, so that farmers didn't have to look to Brazil, you know, how much, whether Brazil was going to have frosts or floods, and whether or not the commodity price was going to go down or up. We wanted to get to a point where we established a product price, where we didn't have to negotiate in terms of what the commodity price was, that was established most often very artificially by the International Coffee Organization. So ensuring that we got that quality product was our central mandate of our investors. So when you look at those prices, it doesn't make too much sense to traders, you know, at that point, you know, because we're paying far beyond that commodity price. So I really have no answers to that, you know. I mean, that was the model we chose, and I believe that we've got a great deal of scope to develop products rather than commoditization of all the products. And I think historically, all the value addition of Indian coffee as a result of it being run by the British was, you know, just export, you know, and create that value in England or abroad, rather than create the value within India. I mean, it was part of, you know, a colonial sort of enterprise, you know. So I think for India, to my mind, is that we've got to accent upon developing products, developing that value addition. I mean, my experience in the milk business, you know, with you know, having a lot of cows and producing milk in the Palani Hills, and then realizing that you've got to get into value addition, you know, whether it's cheese making or yogurt making or something like that, to ensure that your enterprise is worthwhile. I think it's similar with coffee. You've got to get into that value addition, and there are all sorts of ways to do it, even with a simple certification or with a simple grading. You can ensure that you take your coffee beyond dependence upon a commodity price. And I think that was the learning that I think I've had over these last 20 years with Araku coffee.
No, very interesting. Thank you so much, David. That's good insight into it, and it's very impressive because, as you said, the price for fruit is, I think, is almost double than what is paid in typically other parts of the country.
Yeah.
And in order to take that input cost and translate that for the investors, as you said, to cover costs and make a profit, I think I'm sure it's a very daunting task indeed. But all what you said in terms of value addition is absolutely spot on, and I really look forward to emulating this model. I hope that other coffee producers and groups of FPOs follow this model, and you can show us the path forward. Thank you so much. Very informative.
Yes, and just to add to that, I think one of the things that we realized was that all the money from coffee is made downline, beyond the
Yes,
coffee
indeed.
estate, and why should that happen? Why shouldn't there be a shared value? Like when you get into the car industry and you develop, let's say, a sort of a branded car, whether it's a Tata or a Mahindra or whatever, all of the people that go towards making that brand, whether it's the guy who welds the chassis or supplies the ball bearings or the transmission or whatever, they're all making money. But in the case of the farmer who's producing this raw material called coffee, he's the one that's literally getting screwed. And it's simply because we don't have a shared value model. And this model we called Arakonomics. We have to relook at that, our sense of economics, to ensure that we respect the guys that produce the primary product. And if he's not getting a good deal, there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering. There's going to be a lot of dejection. You're not going to get a quality product, and that was basically the mandate of our investors, was to ensure that the guy that produces what's going to make money for everyone down line gets the shared value all the way to the wet coffee. And I believe it's a model that can be replicated if we establish all of these, these virtues all the way along the value addition line.
Absolutely.
Sir, that was quite a beautiful explanation. I just have to intervene because we are completely running short of time. If we have final questions, we can take it up, but kindly be brief. Please go ahead.
This is, hi David, this is Sonalini Menon.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, yes, very well, thank you. You really made me feel very nostalgic by taking me down memory lane. Thank you very much for that. It's really wonderful to see how the little baby that we journeyed together with has grown into I would say, young, beautiful lady.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted a quick question with you. Are you also working, you worked on terroir, which is beautiful and wonderful, which is a concept which we have been toying with for quite some time, and I'm glad you put that into practice. The only point that I wanted to ask you was, do you also work on different plant materials? Because each plant material has a different taste profile. You have beautiful selection 5B, which works very well in the Araku, but have you introduced any other varietal? And are you processing it separately to bring out certain nuances in the cup? Just a quick question.
Thank you for that. Yes, Sonalini, we do indeed. We've introduced Selection 9. We're having good results from that. And one of my favorites, of course, from the Palani Hills, as you know, is 795.
Yes.
And it is what I'm finding, I always keep pressing the point, is that you bring just about any variety and you give it its organic status. You bring in the microbes that enable these coffees, these varieties to express themselves. I think you can make virtually any variety work, in terms of expressing its personality, and I think like for instance, selection 5B can in many cases be, quite an ordinary tasting coffee, but if it's given its due and if it's given its proper nutrition, it has marvelous profiles, as you pointed out. So I think that's a clue for us that we should respect the diverse nutrition that a coffee bush needs. It needs its silica, it needs its calcium elements, it needs all of these rich microbial inputs, and what I've seen over these years is those personalities coming out as a result of the soil getting better. So that's the exciting part of it. And as you say, I'm glad to hear that you're working on the terroir concept, because I think it inspires farmers also to be creative, to co-create along with the processes and develop these coffees better.
Yes, thank you very much, David, and thank you too for acknowledging our journey together. It's been a great year.
I know you're very your presence is always here in the coffee terroirs here, and I look forward to meeting you in Bangalore before long.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You are part of the journey which was told today. A couple of questions, but I would request participants to write in because these are very in-depth questions which will require a lot of explanation. Since we have completely run out of time and sir's time for about 1.5 hours, and it would be right on my part to keep on extending the session. I thank David Hogg for joining us. Sir, it was simply brilliant, I should say. The word which I mean very particularly is it was simple but yet brilliant, in the sense you have demonstrated in a very open way how a wonderful coffee culture has to be created, and from that culture we take it to the next level of actually making the entire value chain vibrant with it. Thank you so much for the open explanation. It was wonderful having you on this platform. This program was arranged by AIC CCRI CED, that is the Atal Incubation Center, which is now located in Coffee Bowl. We encourage entrepreneurs to take up the new ideas and take them from ideation stage to commercialization. We request you to take up this ideas which were given by David. Come out with your ideas. We have also put out the pre-incubation program, which is going to start in March. Do enroll if you want to be part of the incubation. With this said, I thank Dr. David Hogg for sharing his time with us and wonderful insight, simply beautiful insights. Sir, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Vaibhav, and look forward to interacting with you in the future.
Definitely, sir. I thank all the participants for joining in today. We will keep on having these sessions, in the future as well. Thank you so much, sir. With your permission, can I end the meeting?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can write to me at atalincubation@ccri@gmail.com. Some of them wanted to send a feedback, so I'm just going to key in the email address. Please write to us. Thank you so much.